Welcome to this Access PeopleXD Evo webinar, Beyond Annual Reviews, From Skills Gaps to Business Impact. I'm Emma Parkin, Head of Propositions at Access. Whether you're struggling with outdated performance reviews that deliver little value, facing critical skills gaps that impact productivity, or need to demonstrate clear business impact from your development investments, you're in the right place. Over the next 25 minutes, we'll examine the performance and development crisis facing UK organisations, explore how strategic approaches are delivering measurable improvements, and then our solutions consultant will demonstrate exactly how this transformation works in practice. So let's get started. Let me start with a statistic that should be on every board agenda. 20% of the UK workforce, that's 6.5 million people, will be significantly underskilled for their roles by 2030. This isn't some distant threat. It's happening right now in your organisation, affecting your ability to compete, innovate and grow. The financial impact is staggering. Skills gaps are already costing the UK economy £63 billion every year. To put that into perspective, that's more than we spend on defence. For individual organisations, it means lost productivity, missed opportunities, and competitive disadvantages. Every day your workforce lacks critical skills is a day you're falling behind. But here's what makes the crisis even more urgent. Your people know they're falling behind, and they're not waiting around. 40% of workers are actively planning to leave their jobs within the next 12 months. Not thinking about it, actively planning. And when you ask why, 60% cite lack of career development as their primary reason. Think about the compound effect. You're already struggling with skills gaps that cost you money and competitiveness. Your best people, the ones most aware of their development needs, are the most likely to leave the organisation for ones that will invest in them. So your skills gap only gets worse. Productivity drops further and the cycle continues. This isn't just a HR problem, it's a big business threat. In a knowledge economy, your only sustainable competitive advantage is the capability of your people. When 1 in 5 lack the skills they need and 2 in 5 are planning to leave, you're facing a workforce crisis that traditional approaches simply cannot solve. So how are organisations responding to this skills crisis? Unfortunately, most are trapped in performance management approaches that make things worse. Let's start with a shocking statistic. 95% of managers are dissatisfied with their performance review systems. Think about that. The very people responsible for developing talent don't believe in the tools they've got. When 19 out of 20 managers think the system is broken, it's not an implementation problem, it's a fundamental design failure. And the financial waste is extraordinary. Companies with 10,000 employees spend approximately £35 million annually on performance reviews. That's not development budget. That's the cost of running review processes that everyone hates and that don't develop anyone. Imagine redirecting even half of that investment into actual skill development. But the trust crisis might be the most damaging aspect. Only 18% of employees believe performance reviews are fair. When 82% of your workforce questions the integrity of your development process, they disengage completely. They stop seeking feedback, stop pursuing development, and start looking elsewhere for organisations that will invest in them properly. The fundamental problem is timing. Annual reviews made sense in stable industries with predictable skill requirements. But when critical capabilities can emerge within months, think AI, data analytics, new regulations, waiting a year for a development conversation is corporate malpractice. By the time you identify a skill gap in December's review, your competitors who identified it in March have already upskilled their teams and won the business. We're using industrial age tools to solve digital age problems. And every day we persist with these broken systems, the skills gap widens, engagement drops, and our best people leave for organisations that get it. But here's where the opportunity becomes compelling. When organisations transform their approach to performance and development, the results are extraordinary. Gallup's research is definitive. companies with engaged employees are 21% more profitable. Not marginally better, over a fifth more profitable. They also see 17% higher productivity. These aren't soft benefits, they're hard financial returns that any CFO or board would pursue aggressively in any other context. How do they achieve this? By recognising that modern workers expect continuous development, not annual review cycles. They want real-time feedback, visible career paths, and development that clearly connects to business success. They want to see how building new skills today translates into career opportunities tomorrow. The urgency is intensifying. The World Economic Forum estimates that 40% of the workforce will need reskilling in the next 3 years. Not upskilling, complete reskilling. Traditional approaches that take months to identify needs and years to address them simply cannot meet this challenge. But organisations using modern, integrated performance and learning platforms are turning this crisis into competitive advantage. They use analytics to identify skills gaps before they impact performance. They deliver personalised development paths that employees complete. They measure the business impact of every development investment. Most importantly, they create a culture where continuous learning is embedded in daily work, not relegated to annual conversations. Where managers have real-time insights to coach effectively, where employees own their development journey with clear visibility into opportunities. This isn't about replacing annual reviews with quarterly ones. It's about fundamentally reimagining how we develop human capability in organisations. It's about turning your performance management from a compliance exercise into a strategic weapon. Let me put this in stark business terms. In the war for talent and capability, you have two choices. Continue with traditional approaches and watch as skills gaps widen, engagement drops, and your best people leave for more progressive organisations. Or transform your performance and development approach to build the workforce you need for tomorrow. Turn every employee into a continuous learner and make every manager a development coach. Create a clear line of sight between individual growth and business success. The organisations choosing transformation aren't just solving today's skills gaps. They're building the capability to handle whatever skills challenges emerge tomorrow. In a world of constant change, that's the only sustainable competitive advantage. So we've seen the crisis, 20% of the workforce underskilled, costing $63 billion annually, while 40% plan to leave due to poor development. We've seen the system failure, 95% manager dissatisfaction, millions wasted on broken processes, and only 18% believing reviews are fair. And we know transformation delivers real results, 21% higher profitability, and the agility to handle whatever skills challenges emerge. The question is, how do you make the transformation real in your organisation? I'd now like to welcome Josh Morris, Solutions Consultant at Access, who works with organisations daily to transform performance management from an administrative burden into a strategic business advantage. Josh will demonstrate how Access PeopleXD Evo enables companies to move beyond annual reviews to create continuous performance conversations, integrate learning with business objectives, and provide the predictive insights needed to identify and close skills gaps before they impact business performance. Josh, over to you.
Thanks, Emma. So I'm going to jump in and look at the PeopleXD Evo solution and how we can look at beyond annual reviews from skill gaps to business impact. So if we take a look in the manager dashboard, what we have on screen here is the manager dashboard, but we're looking primarily today at the talent dashboard. So in the talent dashboard here, we have a variety of widgets where a manager can clearly see the team's objectives. You can also see key reports, KPIs of overdue and in progress reviews or activities across the team, as well as things like team competencies and also succession planning. So we're going to look at a variety of ways and look at how we can reduce some of those issues that Emma talked about, including skills gaps, looking at the robust nature of typical reviews. So if we look at an example of team appraisals here, we can see James Smith, my employee. We can see the specific performance review for 2025. Now, the talent solution in the PeopleXD solution includes the ability for a variety of toolkit options. So you don't have to have a rigid structure of those performance reviews. We can start to set objectives, we can have quarterly check-ins, we could have monthly one-to-ones, again providing managers and organisations the flexibility to include steps where required in their talent process. If we look at one of the example of the setting objectives, we can see that James has a work in progress of reducing costs across the organisation. These can be cascaded down from the organisation. A manager can also include these key objectives as well as that full performance review. We can see the description of those key metrics, what we're looking at measuring, how we're going to measure those objectives with a start and end date and a priority again in the solution. Looking at how that individual is going to contribute, looking at the attainability, again reflecting back on some of the stats that Emma talked about in the review processes being fair and engaging. Here we have the flexible nature of the talent solution to include those nice key objectives, how that individual is going to work through those objectives with any milestones, ratings and performance indicators along the way. Again, it doesn't have to be a rigid approach for the whole organisation. You can see there some of the examples of being cascaded down with managers having the ability to add those objectives as well. You may wish to also include some of the employees' own objectives, personal objectives, again giving them the engagement on driving their success as well as those organisation-wide goals. You'll now see on the left-hand side that I've got a career development stage, so those conversations that happen between a manager and an employee partway through the year, you don't have to write those down. These are systemising those processes, getting to that engagement piece with that individual employee. Where do they want to progress through next in the organisation, and how can that manager help to get and achieve those different areas? Think about the different questions around succession. Do you require any more training? Again, a real engaging conversation that is systemised to capture those goals and objectives, not for the whole organisation, but also for that individual employee. There's also key functionality around things like company feedback. So gathering that company feedback or employee feedback in the solution is key. So a manager can sit down and complete those reviews alongside the employee. It keeps them both accountable and driven in the right direction that the organisation wishes, but also including some of those key personal goals too. Here you can see some of the feedback, some of it's anonymised for that individual employee, some of the overall performance ratings, some of the additional comments and collaboration skills, timekeeping skills, etc. And these can be configured by yourselves and your teams across the organisation. You can also see some input here around James' strengths and those comments, and again feedback from his co-peers and workers. You can see also areas of improvement. Again, not only does this look at areas in which James can strive for in the future, but also align them to those objectives as well as part of that review process. Taking a step back, we can also look at different competencies. So a couple of different example competencies in here. Building and managing the relationship. Again, we're systemising the approach of that talent process, but also it's clear and concise for James, the employee, to focus on certain areas. Building and managing relationships of these competencies, and clear instruction of what James needs to do to appear in the next level of building and managing relationships, as noted as an essential competency in James's current role. You can see there's a manager rating and an employee rating against those competencies. Again, building in those development plans or objectives to close those gaps and progress James through the organisation. You then finish off with a talent factors update. This is where a manager can input things like flight risk, current future potential, or are they ready to move into a next role immediately. Again, this forms part of the 9-box grid, which we'll look at, again, their retention, look at the loss of impact, etc. Again, those individuals that aren't provided with key goals and progression throughout the organisation tend to leave in most industries. Jumping into the manager reviews, again, we can see those key insights and key reports. We can also look at the 9-box grid. Again, a visual representation of all of Mike's individual team members, where they sit in terms of their expectations, low, medium or high risk of leaving as well. In here, we can see all of that information, the high performance, the limited potential, and when they may or may not be ready to view or move into the next role in the next couple of years. Again, clicking on James Smith there from the 9-box grid, This will then bring up all of the associated information around James's talent profile. Again, think about the current review processes that they're involved in, any badges or shout outs, rewards that they've been given for great work. You can see some badges achieved there around giving great advice. You can also see James that is in a current performance review of 2025. Mike can simply review all of this information surrounding James in one screen here. We can see those different factors, the talent factors, any previous performance history, but also key to the individual and thinking about the engagement aspects is where does James want to go to next in terms of career options. Looking at the support technician role, it's done a percentage match on his current skills and the current areas to focus on. So we can see the leadership skills, problem solving skills. He also speaks French, but he doesn't quite have a qualification in the Certificate of Management Studies. Again, this goes quite nicely with those development plans, engaging the individual in focusing on their career aspirations, promoting the individuals from the organisation within. Again, it's a lot more cost effective than hiring externally. And again, that engagement for James, the individual, to take his career into his own path. You've also got qualifications, training history in the talent profile area. Again, Mike can easily access all of James's talent related information, the languages and skills that he has achieved throughout his tenure at the organisation, all in one place, and we can gather the 9-box grid information on screen here. We can also look at James individually and look at that talent profile, but also we can start to look at certain areas of that talent dashboard, looking into the expectations, the flight risk, the different areas that Manager Mike here needs to focus on. So talking about those career aspirations for James, we need to create a succession plan based on James the individual, or it could be that we create a succession plan for a specific role. We can then start to plan for the future. Again, so there's no skills gaps across Mike's team here. We can view the organisation chart and view who would likely succeed James if he were to be promoted from within the organisation. We can see here that John's not quite ready. Jack is ready now. Again, if Jack was to move into James's role, how are we going to plan on that individual progressing through the organisation? Closing not only the skills gaps from James's development plan, but also creating and managing those succession plans for employees to give them the career guidance, the opportunity, and of course, engagement for that career progression across the different teams. Then if we look at the manager areas, the manager dashboard, we can see those different objectives as well as some of the key performance areas. So looking at things like resignation, I touched on earlier the career progression aspects, we can see why employees resigning from the organisation, giving you that key analytical insight and information across the teams. We can see some went on to further study, whilst all others left due to the career progression opportunities. The talent solution in here looks reducing those resignation rates and metrics in here by gathering those career objectives, looking at those goals and insights and progressing James through the organisation. We can see the resignation rate and predictions across the organisation, but also key to this, who is at risk of resigning next. We can see the key infographics on screen here. They've got the key resignation rate figures of 6.42. We can then look at the individuals involved in the group, in the roles, in the tenure range, and start to put in some engagement strategies, surveys to negate the needs of these resignations. Again, giving you that powerful insight across the predictions and the resignation rates. We can alter the dates, the times in these infographics. We can also see those key insights, again, building on the talent information that we've looked at previously, the objectives and goals, and look at driving down those resignation rate metrics, giving you that all-encompassing information around your analytics. You're not having to create these infographics from scratch, and they're pre-configured to utilise. If you'd like to find out more, please reach out to the team. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I really hope you've picked up some useful insights and can see how what we've shown you today can help tackle the challenges you're facing. If what you've seen resonates with you, why not take a look at how Access PeopleXD Evo could work for your organisation? You'll find all the details on our website, and you could book a demo that's tailored just to you. We'll pop that link up on the screen now. Thanks again, and have a great day.